Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the February committee meeting to order. Pennsylvania Board of Education. Happy Groundhog's Day. Have you all been celebrating? Oh. Okay, I'm going to turn the agenda over to Mr. Johnston.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and pull out your agenda. Before we get started, I do just want to welcome Mrs. Jennifer Sleppy, our new business manager. So if you don't, most of you probably know Jen, but she's with us for the first meeting tonight. So welcome aboard. And if you go with me to the agenda, we do have a couple things, a couple items to be presented tonight. And first, we want to welcome Brenda Pawlowski from Kotzen. So she will be giving a presentation on the past fiscal year. So welcome, Brenda. Thanks for coming.
Good evening.
Yes.
It's on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was there?
Yeah.
Happy 2/2/22.
On 2/22/22 will be Tuesday. Did you know that?
Say that again.
2/2/22 is a Tuesday.
I didn't know that.
Is that in our report?
Literally, is my niece is a math texted me yesterday. She says, tomorrow's 2/2/22, but it's not Tuesday. 22/22. It's Tuesday.
Okay.
It was.
Okay. So I won't true it for you. Okay. So we're not doing a PowerPoint slide. So good news, we have it unmodified. Controls and compliance over the federal program. So the last couple of years, we've had some material audit adjustments that we've had to make into the findings. The total federal expenditures for this year were 1.8 million. Who knows why the federal expenditures are higher this year than last year?
So it was.
Okay. If I ask you a question, answer. The federal programs that we tested this year, we have to test because we've had findings in the past, we have to test at least 40%. So we tested the Education Stabilization Fund, which was your ESSER 1, 2, and 3 monies, as well as the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which was the money that came through the CCP. So that was 750,000. Got us for 40%. Last year we tested about 500,000. On the next page, looking at your governmental funds for the funds, look at the fund balance. 544,000.
Okay.
So we're seeing that across the board. Fund balance. Some of the things we talked about with some of the schools, something they need to do that maybe isn't covered by something. Free up other money to do the other project or something that you need to do that isn't covered. So there's some good with having that. These increasing their infrastructure. General fund had an increase of 778. Service fund had a decrease of 218, and that's going to continue to decrease as the debt is paid down. The budget to actual comparison, there was no real positive variance of almost 1.8 million, and that's mostly because the COVID money wasn't budgeted for because it was kind of an uncertain time, so. On the next slide. Again, this is, funding focus, we'll be looking at balance. General fund is 4.6 compared to the 3.8 last year. Your general fund expenditures were 18 million this year, 17.5 last year. 2 months of expenses of 3 million. So we can compare your 2 months of expenditures to what your fund balance is. Good benchmark. Don't like to see that increase again because of. So once we get through all of this, COVID money, eventually we'll be back down to more and more expenditures to fund balance. Looking at you on the next slide from a business focus. So aside from fund balance, we're looking at you as a business. There was an increase in your net position of almost $700,000. And we have total assets deferred outflows of resources of 33 million. Of that, 8 million is cash, investments, receivables of 1.7, and your assets of 18.5. So that's all your building. Continuing on with that business focus, so the next slide is your total liabilities, 3 million. Of bonds of 8.7, pension liability of almost 24 million. The future health insurance, basically liability that would have liability. So there was an increase in our pension liability from 23.2 to 23.9. So that does leave you with a negative net position of 7.3 million, which every district in Pennsylvania has a negative net position. So meaning your liabilities are your assets. That is because of the pension. Once the pension liability became part of your financial statements, so you're not an anomaly, it's the standard. No, that's a lot. If there's any questions.
Brenda, can you remember how much pension liability went up over last year? That didn't.
What I can tell you is last year was 23.2.
Oh, you did say
Yeah,
that.
and it was 23.2.
Is that because of investments?
Be a combination of a lot of things. So you have to remember too, they're a year behind. So like the pension liability is so some of that could be investments because the market would have been after COVID started by June 30, 20, so have an impact. So that could be part of that. Because your payroll will there's so many variables. That's why the exact actuaries to life expectancy, if they change those tables, which they have over the years, every year I think they use a table to determine the life expectancy of participants. So if those change, it can increase the liability and then increase your so they take the total liability of Pacers and then they allocate it out based on your payroll. So your percentage of payroll is the percentage of the liability you get. It's not like they're looking at one person. It's just strictly based on
Brenda,
this
let
is
me
your
ask you,
payroll. Your
is that
payroll,
allocated once a year?
they allocate it once a year.
Okay, so say our payroll reduced $1 million, then that whole piece would be reallocated.
It would be, but it's such a it'll be a small piece, but yes, it would drop. It would drop. take a year for it to drop though, because again, they're a year behind. So if you drop payroll in June 30, June 30, 22,
Okay,
you won't see it until June. But yeah, if you drop payroll, it changes your allocation.
I'm embarrassed to ask this, but I'm going to do it. That's not set somewhere. That's just the liability. We don't have, well, we have some set aside, but that's saying that's what we will, pension will be our responsibility for the pension over in the future.
Yeah, so
Is that it?
they put it at a net present value, so that's the value of, if you would close down the June 30, 21. They're saying that would be your share of the liability that's out there. No. Or that would never happen. Like even if you did shut down, they wouldn't make you pay. Someone else would.
So these are future, because we pay every year, of
You do
course.
pay, yeah. Now
I
this is,
think, the unfortunate thing for any new board member, there's been a number of states that have had pension plans that have just hit the tank, and that's because of poor investment, not when 1980, but Illinois, Chicago, California, Pennsylvania have all had these lousy numbers, and it's taken, well, I don't know, forever to get out of it. And I can always remember saying, can you remember, Brent? I said, one day they're going to make us put that on the book. On the books?
Oh, yeah, I remember,
It's on the books.
I'm not gonna say how long I've been doing this.
Yeah.
but I remember, so your pension contribution that you're making now is what, 30?
Around there, yeah.
The percentage that you're paying for the employees currently, it's like 38, whatever, 30 some percent. I remember years, you didn't have to pay anything, in. They were so overfunded. There were no contributions even necessary by the districts. And they kind of warned people back then, they're like, we should be contributing something, even if it's not required. Like, we should be still contributing something to reduce the effects in the future. And that didn't happen. But yeah, there were times it was zero, and then just single digit percentages being paid in. It was just looking at it now. It's just about where you are now. I'm a young person.
Sure.
It wasn't that long ago. In my mind, it wasn't that long. Okay. The next slide is a chart I do every year. I give you the revenues and expenditures compared to budget for prior years. So again, I mentioned looking at the budget column, the revenues were budgeted. The COVID revenues were budgeted. There is in the actual audit report on pages 6 to 14 is a management's discussion and analysis. Sometimes that can be helpful if you don't know the entire report. There's a sort of a nice summary that talks about variances. That's often a nice thing to look at. If you don't want to read the whole thing, which nobody does. It's something to look at to kind of feel what happens. And again, the next slide is just the expenditures. Again, comparing budget to the current year as well as the prior years. You're going to see increases in the expenditures again because of COVID. I did have an increase in revenue, so even though you're not getting the student sales, your subsidy increased, everything that the federal government did. So your sales were down 80, but your subsidy was up 190,000, so that was positive. Your expenses were up about 43,000. At the bottom there, you see, so the cafeteria does show its share of the pension liability because the cafeteria, for accounting purposes, is treated as a business. So they have to reflect their share of the liability for the pension in their financial statement. So that's why they have a negative net position. They have a positive number. Without the pension in there, they'd still be the negative 112 this year, and they were the negative this year. They do have a large amount due the general fund, and we do a management letter every year. So budgeting, every so many years we'll do that, just a budget transfers to the cafeteria so that some of that fund can be paid down. So basically, you give them money and then they. So it's, they have to be separate. You can't.
Do any food services? Make unexpected do?
But almost all of that is supported by just the nature of the beast.
The biggest impact would be if we had got more help from the government on that.
Yeah, participation is always a big thing. The more kids you have participate, the more funding you get. So that's the trigger, but getting teenagers to
John, I'm gonna just digress and take a second if you don't mind, Brenda, because we're trying to deal with some budget issues, and one happens to be the cafeteria. We didn't deal with it last year. We need to deal with it now. We had about $100,000 loss. I'm not gonna say too much about it. I mean, we talked with Mets before in terms of some of the things we can do. But we certainly believe that we can take out close to $100,000 of loss. And we would do that via increased participation. So if the board can remember, we set up a separate committee this year called It's Technology, but it also has special projects. I think Rich and Lisa and Tammy's on that. We were going to ask you to stay tonight, but if you can, the whole idea of having you guys look at that right now is there's a number of things we can do to lessen our losses. But I think the easiest thing for us to do is increase participation. And I'd leave it up to you guys to look at how you increase participation. Like Darren said, we do a second morning breakfast at 9:30. But if the meals are free, and they're free now, and our participation rate is 70-some%. What is it, 72? If we can move the participation to, I don't know what the number is, 80-some%, that might take care of our deficit. Maybe $100,000, maybe not that much. We're still losing money, aren't we?
Correct.
So if the committee can look at all the options in terms of, it's like Darren said, maybe the second breakfast is too close to lunch. We're not getting that participation, but 70-some% is not that big. But it's the easiest thing for us to do, turn that around, is increase participation. But the thing that was interesting to me is the meals are free now. I know that's not always going to be the case.
That's supposed to end June 30.
Correct.
Unless they do something.
Actually, it's not even June 30. It's the last day of school.
So I do,
I haven't heard yet, but
And-
they're not saying anything, so probably not.
Yeah.
and the only reason I take time to digress is we're going to have some budget issues coming up here real soon. That's something that we should be working on right now. So if we can save, if you could save 60, 70, 80, $100,000, we should be working to do that now. So anyways, now is, I think, the time to just talk a little bit about that.
I would say too, maybe talk to some other districts and see what they do.
Yeah, we had a rep that came in and talked to us, but he might need to cut it up from that. But you're right, you're right.
There was some percentage. I don't know, some of this- The thought for the frontier, which they would do, but during COVID, they were sending meals out. So there are certain things we're required to communicate. Any difficulties encountered during the audit, we have none despite COVID and also despite the work with government business manager. We didn't have any missteps. And it's normal. Great job summing in and helping us to get through everything. So thank you for that. We're required to report any corrected or uncorrected misstatements. We have some immaterial things that we lost. This typical with most audits that we do, nothing that rose to the level of finding. There were no disagreements with management. We did obtain a multi-page representation letter from management, but Mr. Johnston signed that letter. Just, they've shared everything with us. There's nothing that they haven't informed us of. Clients, as far as you're aware, those types of things. There was no consultation with other accountants. As I mentioned, we issue a letter each year after the cafeteria fund balance. And also some new accounting standards that came out, more coming out. This year we have the PMASD 4, which is on fiduciary activities. This basically covered scholarship funds, which didn't affect you because yours are now all with the community foundation, so there was no impact to you. Student activity funds, the only thing to change there, we used to just have to do one financial statement, which was a balance sheet. Here's the cash, here's what students. Let's add another page to the report. So that's what basically, here's some extra footnotes, but basically that on the page to show here's the fundraising income, here's the expense. Really normal, but always the hours that we tell us to do. There will be a new standard coming out. And this is going to affect not your fund balance, not that set of financial statements, but your statements that make you look like a business. Actually now be treated as was a loan and instead of your financial statements. So we change there, but again, not to affect fund balance or anything. So we have there. And I will thank you. Pretty smoothly. And if there's any that come about the works,
What are leases? You lease the gym or something?
what you're talking.
Oh, no, okay, that's fine.
That's the main one. Everybody's talking.
Things we lease.
Any other questions for Brenda? Thank you. You're certainly welcome to stay tonight, but you won't offend us if you leave. Okay, going back to agenda under programs, we have been rotating through Act 93 members, just asking them to give a brief description of the responsibilities. And so this evening, it's Nicole's turn as the assistant business manager.
If you go back, it should be like 2 slides. Yeah. Okay, I was asked to present my duties as assistant business manager. Next. Some of my daily, weekly duties is the processing of the district mail, processing and issuing payments for invoices within the general fund, the cafeteria, and the capital reserve. I also complete purchase orders and approve all district purchase orders. I input journal entries if needed. I tackle purchasing for maintenance, federal programs, pre-K, special ed, technology, and tax collectors. I answer any questions from the community and staff. I complete payroll wires. There's a process with our payroll. Leanne inputs it. but it doesn't actually post until I upload it, and then it posts, and then there's work to be done. I process all the W-9s for athletic officials or any company that we're doing business with. And I also, during athletic seasons, issue payments to the officials. Some of my monthly duties would be reconciling all the bank accounts for the district. I also update monthly expenses for the federal program and pre-K counts. We track attendance that's required for pre-K counts. I also submit the cafeteria claim and student meals into the pairs, which is a system with how we get our subsidy from the cafeteria. I pull the checks and wires for the monthly payroll. We verify all purchase orders that have been closed properly at the month end, just to make sure there's nothing hanging out there. Monthly, I also do the board reports and the agenda. I have to also update all district contracts after the board meeting, after everything's signed. I make sure that gets sent out, everything's finished, and then we save it out there. I also take the deposits to the bank to make sure everything's getting done. I have to work with Tri-County to verify figures for the monthly invoice. We have a base amount with the Tri-County invoices, but then what happens is we have to subtract all the gas that's purchased without the month to get to a total, and that has to be verified before payment is issued. Some of my quarterly duties would be submitting the grants into FAI. That is how we get payment for our grants. You have to spend the money to get the money. I also have to do reports into Pelican. The Pelican system would be just for pre-K counts. And again, I have to do quarterly payroll checks and wires. Some of my yearly tasks would be doing pre-K registration, inputting student data into Pelican, and work sampling, which is all required from the grant. Setting up Life Steps contract. We're also required to have them come in within 60 days of school starting to do the assessment. We also have to build the classes out, AM and PM, and then getting transportation arranged for the students. Another one would be the free and reduced food program. In the past couple of years, we went digital instead of doing mail applications by paper. I take phone calls on that, helping people fill out the stuff. If they can't get the application filled out online, I have them come in. I work with them, get a Chromebook, we get the application completed. Some people still want paper. I send them home with the kids. You also have to verify Compass information out on the state's website to see if a student may receive free meals. And then there's also reports that have to be completed with the free and reduced program. You have to complete verification on October 1 based off of what our school district looks like, our food and program for how many people are getting free and reduced. I process the district's 1099s. I also complete the application for the school year and the SSL application for a summer food program if needed. I verify all the purchase orders that are closed for year end. I also try by end of May to ensure all our grants are expended by the year end, and that way all their yearly reports can be submitted into FAI and pre-K or Pelican for pre-K. Another duty is statement of financial interest, making sure that we all submit our statements in a timely manner. I also have to renew for the SAMs, which we're required to have because we get federal program money. For pre-K counts, in February, we mostly start posting the ads out on the website, the paper, the marquee, and stuff is sent home with the students. March and April, depending on scheduling with PSSAs, we do registration. By June, letters go home to the families, letting them know if they're AM or PM. Again, it's entered into the tracking systems. We complete the pre-K grant information in e-grants, which is required every 5 years. Next year, we'll be doing a reval to see if we'll qualify for the 5 more years. Pelican is updated yearly. In August, I also do parent orientation. We actually on Monday just completed our audit for the year for pre-K. And the past 4 years, we've received a perfect score, which is kind of unheard of. Monthly reports are completed on expenses and attendance. And there's also a yearly required conference to attend. Federal programs, there's an annual conference you have to attend. If you do not attend any trainings or conferences, we get docked when they come to audit. Currently, we're working with Title I, Title II, Title IV, Masters 2, Art Masters set aside. There's monthly reports to be submitted. Ensure that all the requirements are being completed, parent involvement, type certifications, inventories, non-publics, and contracts. All these applications are getting entered into e-grants. Quarterly reports are also submitted into FAI. I have to verify that all expenses are getting correctly in the applications. Federal programs are audited in a cycle unless medium or high risk. This year we are getting audited because it's our cycle. I also do stuff for the foundation. I process and track payments within the foundation. I complete payment reminders. I process year-end payment letters, and I assist in completing the yearly audit. For the fitness center, I also collect and submit payments, track memberships, and make sure membership cards are getting completed. Safety committee, I'm a member of the safety committee. I complete the agendas and the minutes, submit accident reports to the committee, maintain all reports, agendas, and minutes for the audits. We're required to do an annual training. I submit the annual HANDS application. What that is the way that we get our discount for our insurance. I think it's like a 15 to 20% discount we get for doing that stuff. For board secretary, I complete agendas, I upload the attachments, I send the agendas out to you guys, I post them, and I post the minutes. Agendas need to get sent for approval. I must maintain all the board ads for any audits, and I complete and sign off on all documents and maintain the contracts for the district. Okay, security and safety. Scheduling security for the building, daytime and after hours, and attending any safety trainings for the district. I also do. I think that's it. I wear lots of hats.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole? Wow, she's up. Questions from anyone?
I'm not a question, I'll just add to the fact that she said she takes care of the foundation. She takes care of all the donor reports. And she also takes care of the EITC program. And that's not necessarily easy to understand. That's the Earned Income Tax Credit program. So I know you spend a lot of time taking care of that.
Okay.
You just had one line. So basic foundation.
I was just going general.
Okay, back to agenda, program presentations. Just letting you know that next week, Dr. Mattson, new IU director, will be visiting us and spending her turn with us at our board meeting. Going down through, we have nothing under negotiations. Number 5, curriculum, school calendar for next year. You take a look. That is a draft. If you have any comments or questions that you would like it changed, we'll go ahead and have it approved next week. Or if you think that we're rushing it, we can even wait for a month. But as you can see, in August, we'll have the 2 in-service days followed by an Act 80 day on the 24th. First student day be the 25th. Rest of our calendar falls tradition to what we've normally done, with making the last day, student day, for the 22-23 school year on May 31st. Last teacher day would be June 1st. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. Moving along to budget and finance. Before we get into letter A, Mr. Packer and I had been discussing setting up a time where we'll do a budget orientation to get us oriented, particularly for the committee that does the budget and finance committee. But above all, just opening up to anyone as a board member to talking about summarizing where we are as a district financially, and then priming up everyone for going through budget, which of course is due. Preliminary budget has to be done in May, approving the final budget in June. So we want to set an hour and a half sometime. possible dates for anybody? Want to suggest a date? Anybody want to suggest a date?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
You wanted the date,
Is there a good day? You want me to toss a couple dates out to you in an email tomorrow?
I think that'd be a good idea. Give us some dates to pick from.
Any day not to stay away from? Or is it just better to send you?
Send some dates.
Just send some
Okay.
dates.
I'll send some dates tomorrow.
February 14th.
February what?
14th.
Okay, well, yeah, we won't do February 14th. You will be busy and many others would probably
Not one of you.
be frowned upon if we were sitting here instead of somewhere else on the 14th. Okay, budget and finance, 6A, we do have one motion asking you to approve the general operation budget for the IU. You have a packet there in front of you. If you would flip to the page, I know there's a lot of pages, but if you flip to the one that says page 1 down in the right-hand corner, at the top of the page, it says Aaron, Intermediate Unit 28, General Operating Budget. Columns. Give you a second to get there. So on that page 1, which is probably about 8 pages back, I'm guessing. Page 1 indicates the total expenses for the general operating budget for the IU. It's $3,323,887. They are indicating that is a decrease from the previous year by $103,507. If you flip to the next page, that's page 2, you can see each district's local contribution to the general operation budget. Of course, we're listed there as number 9, Penns Manor, and we'll be passing a motion to pass the budget plus our local contribution of $22,592. And simply that's for us a decrease of $51 from the previous year for our contribution. And again, that's determined by average daily membership across the districts. And of course, there's a lot more detailed information in that whole packet, but in the motion, we typically put total cost for their budget and then what Penns Manor's contribution will be for that general operation budget. Questions on that? Okay, moving along. Buildings and grounds. If you take a look for 7A, we do have a handout. We had a date for bids to be submitted February 1st at 3 o'clock. We did receive one sealed bid. You can see on the handout that bid is from Jeff Aldemus from Pikes Peak Nurseries, and the bid is $5 per ton. So question would be that as you as a board, do you want a motion to award that bid next week, or would you want to wait, have some discussion, questions that you want? But that's the information we have at this point. Did advertise. We do have one bid, and again, for Mr. Ultimus at $5 a ton.
Did
And to
anybody
remind
else
you that
look
there's
at
about
it?
400 ton there. So that's an estimate of how much is there.
Anybody else show an interest and come look or
We
anything?
had a couple people speak with us. I sent the information out to one other person. I know Mr. Dalton sent information to one other person, but we didn't receive anything but the one.
Sound low. I mean, if you want to get rid of it, you're gonna get rid of it. That's $2,000, but I don't know I know it's not screen mark, but it's topsoil.
Do we want to get rid of? I mean, is it causing a problem? Just, that's what I question.
It's not way down there at all.
Will we ever use it?
Yes, if you're telling you, ever use it, but.
If we were gonna buy a ton of topsoil, how much would we be paying?
You know, Mark, it's usually screened and by the yard. I don't know. $5 a ton.
There was a bid for all or nothing, right? There was no, you couldn't bid on so much of it. You had to take it all. Was that the way it was set up?
Correct. Correct.
Do you think $5 a ton's a little on the low end or? I do. I don't know much about it, but I would say I feel about the same. I mean, if it was in our way and we definitely needed rid of it.
If we need to move it, I would recommend maybe because it costs us money to move it, just swap it somewhere else, but it's not in the way. It's been sitting there for what, 4 years now,
Yes.
5, and it's not affecting anything there.
Be able to get us a ballpark figure, Mark, of what. Again, I know it's not screened, but
I'll make a couple phone calls.
okay.
Has it got big goonies in it, or is it just?
It has some small rocks.
Humber has a little bit of drain.
There's a lot of plastic drainage from when we put up the fill, all that stuff's in it.
A little
There's some gravel in it from when they put the drains in.
Okay, anything else you want us to have except Mark getting a comparison? Once he's able to get that, I'll email that out to you. If you want to communicate back, or we can hold for a month, fine with that too, whatever you'd like.
Give Mark time to get the information. Wait another month. It's not gonna.
Okay.
Kill us.
Not gonna take it out tomorrow.
That's true. Not gonna take it out the next 2 days. Okay, moving along to athletics. We will have a motion or recommendation from the athletic committee to hire a head junior high football coach. We'll talk about those interviews in executive session and the recommendation. And also with that, we also have a recommendation from the athletic committee for the assistant junior high football coach. And again, we'll talk about applicants and names in executive sessions. Letter C, just an update on the head volleyball coach committee head discussion. We have advertisement out there again, seeking to see if there's anyone else that may be interested in the head volleyball coach. So as we move forward, I'll share that information with the athletic committee. At some point, we'll process interviews and have a recommendation for that position also. We also received a resignation from Mrs. Kazemchek as the track and field girls assistant coach 2. So a motion to accept her resignation and depost. And then also letter E, we have spring sports volunteers, track and field Megan Schwartz, baseball Jimmy Smith, Josh Detweiler, and Mark Matko. Next, athletic committee, also when they met for interviews for junior high football, we also talked about official stipend. So if you would take a look at the handout that's with your packet, 8F. Mr. Macy collected for us what each school, you see the school initials out across the top of the spreadsheet. You can see us in the middle as PM, and right to the right of our column of PM, I've titled the column adjustment. And so we are seeking or recommending to the board to have a motion to increase stipend payments for those that is indicated in that column. So volleyball for varsity football, raising to 65, varsity basketball. And I do just want to share with the committee that feedback from the basketball group through Mr. Mazy was they appreciate that adjustment. What they've been talking about is any new people that they want to add. They felt that it would be better than a 65. However, the committee's recommendation is 60. Varsity baseball and varsity softball, adjusting those two. Questions, comments from committee or anyone? Want to go with the motion to make that happen? Okay. Moving along to transportation, approved drivers for the 21-22 school year. You can see that we have substitutes and a motion for approval next week. technology, special projects, 10A. Mr. Gramling has presented to us, looking ahead and taking advantage of looking at ways to compensate for getting technology that we need to replace. So going through the E-grant process, E-grant provides the opportunity for us to purchase technology, as I indicated. It ends up being that whatever our total cost is, that the district's reimbursed 80%, leaving us with 20% to pay for. So I'm going to let Mr. Gramling introduce to you what he would like to replace, keeping in mind that 80-20 cost. When I say 80-20 cost, he wants to go through the process, and he'll talk about the process too. Wouldn't be making the purchase until July 1. So our 20% would be coming out of his new budget in the 22-23 school year. Dave, you want to? Yes.
So what we're looking at doing is replacing 5 existing switches that are currently, so back up the process. So E-rate is a program through the FCC. It is actually what pays for a portion of our internet connection. That is what is considered Category 1 funding that pays for that portion. They have Category 2 funding, which is network infrastructure, wireless infrastructure. And that program was actually for 5 years. It ran out and was renewed. So we're now in our new budget period as of last year. So we can leverage that money for purchasing of network technology. So we have 4 network switches that are currently end of life, and 1 switch that we have issues with from time to time that needs replaced. So we're looking to replace 5 switches. And then the other portion of what we're looking to do is the Meraki infrastructure that we have moved to in the last few years has an ongoing license. And it's a little convoluted, whereas the entire network has a license date, even though you purchase a license for every piece of equipment. There's a weighted average that, wireless access point has the least weight, whereas firewall has the most weight. And when you purchase those, every individual license that you purchase moves that date out for your license, for your entire network. So right now we're looking at an expiration date, I believe, of November 24th, 2023. But looking at our individual licenses, we are actually out of date on our access point license. So I am looking at purchasing a license for every one of our access points, which then of course will move that date out. Unfortunately, until it goes through the formula, I can't say what that would be, but we're looking at 5-year licensing, which should at least move that date out 4.5 years, 5 years. We're looking to release an RFP, so I can't nail down what that pricing would be. Part of the E-rate process is I can't speak to any vendors ahead of time, especially with Meraki. That way, I don't know what the actual pricing. I can look at the PEPM contract pricing, and that's what I provided to Mr. Johnston, that I feel that our portion after the 80-20 split will be about $12,000. I actually believe it'll probably be less than that once the quote is put in. But because of the limitations of E-rate, I can't speak to a vendor, because then they say that you're favoring one vendor over another. So it has to be a blind process until we release the RFP, and then we would get our proposals back. We're required to have the RFP out for 28 days, and then we can make our decision. So unfortunately, I believe that takes us to the 11th of March, and it has to be awarded by March 22nd. So that would be the timing. These timetables are set by E-rate. So the 470, which is the RFP process, is entered, and then 28 days later, you can award it and put in the 471 form, which is the accepting of the proposal. And then we would be looking at this in next year's budget amount that would be to the technology budget.
So with that said, next week's motion would be you granting us permission to go through the E-rate process, putting out the RFP. And because of that timing, it's falling after our March board meeting, we would also like to word that you would grant administration to award the bid based on the fact of whatever the E-rate process indicates to us is the best company to go with. So again, I'll get the wording worked up between me, Dave, and Mr. Saffron. But we are asking because of the timing that allow us as administration, because actually, understand this, it may not necessarily be the lowest bidder. If they have to go through this whole entire process, meet all of the qualifications. Dave explained to me that someone could put in their proposal that they're offering to sell us something that we didn't even ask for. So just to get the lower bid, but that is not the E-rate process. So we would be awarding the best solution going through that E-rate process. Anything you want to add to that part, Dave?
No, just that E-rate requires that you weigh, and on the final sheet of the RFP, it explains that weight process. RFP or the E-rate process requires that you give the most weight to price, but you can weigh other factors. So relationship with the company, references, and the how that proposal works with your existing network is one of those weights. Because like I was said to Mr. Johnson, we're looking to keep all our network equipment kind of the same. So we have Meraki switching. We would like to stay with Meraki switching. That's what I'm asking for. But when we've gone through this process, companies will come in and bid an HP switch. Okay, yes, technically it fits the proposal, but it can't be managed in the same interface. It's not a apples to apples replacement, but because E-rate says you can do that, companies will do that and hope that because they're the lowest bidder, they'll get it, even though they're not what we're asking. So that's why I kind of caution you. It may not be the lowest bidder because we might have companies that will come in and do that. Actually, the last time when we did the HEPA mini bid part of E-rate, we did have a company come in and do that exact thing. We were asking for Meraki access points and Meraki switching, and we had a company come in and quote out HP, which wouldn't work for our network. We'd have half the rooms having HP access points and half Meraki would have just been a mess to accept that bid. So that's why in the points procedure, yes, 25 points is granted to price, but I believe 20 points is granted to how it works with our existing network. So that's just to kind of keep in mind that there may be lower bidders just because this isn't limited to any vendor that we deal with. The E-rate system, there are companies that just monitor the system. Once I put in the 470 form, we'll get proposals from all over the country from companies because they can access the system and see it. We can, once it's put in there, we can send to preferred vendors, but anybody else can also bid on it.
We're replacing switches.
Yes,
Will they have any value?
No.
The ones we're taking out?
they are not only end of support, they are end of life as well. So you couldn't buy those, and Cisco won't support them anymore.
So Mr. Gramling estimates that the 20% cost would be anywhere from 9 to 12,000. And again, that would come out of the technology budget in 22-23.
If we don't do it, just want to die in the future.
I experienced that last year and you don't want that to happen.
The,
I'm with you.
the switching, yeah, it may die, and then we're deciding what computers or what access points not to have until we can get a switch. The licensing on that November 24th, 2023 date, the next day, the entire network will stop functioning. So that's the one area that we definitely have.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. The other thing that happens is you have multiple switches that operate different systems. And so like, I'm assuming your phone system is on some form of switch that
Yep.
if that switch fails, then you've lost your communications through phone. And you
I
know,
think
or
that's the
some-
most
yeah, so
important information.
yeah,
We got to do it.
that's a great question, but yeah, I said it, you know, doesn't mean they're all gonna fail at the same time, but if one starts failing, and then the rest of them.
But don't you like to watch Dave sweat? That's what Darren told me.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, the switching is a big piece of this project. That's a risk some people may or may not be willing to take. The licensing portion, that is not a risk that we can take it because it is, Meraki kind of has you at that point that if you don't license your network, they just turn it off. So.
I'm good with your suggestion,
Any other questions, comments?
recommendation.
Moving down through the agenda, nothing under public relations, nothing under policies, nothing under correspondence, new business. Hire instructional assistant. At this point, we do have one applicant. We're going to go through the process of interviewing. If we feel confident, I'll share that information with you. If we can get that done and get done through that process by Monday, I'll communicate with you by email and have that on the agenda. If not, it will be the following month. Next, 14B, hire elementary art teacher. Interviews will be conducted on Monday at 9 a.m. Anybody is welcome, as always, to come to those. And we'll talk about applicants that we're interviewing in executive session this evening. Next, post for elementary summer learning loss camp. And that's paid through ESSERS. And Mrs. Zeglin will be in charge of doing that summer learning loss camp, looking at 7 teachers, the nurse to come in along with 2 IAs. And again, that's all paid for ESSER funds. We just want to move forward to post for those positions. Same thing with extended school year. Mrs. Delby will be organizing extended school year. And we'll ask to post for teachers to make that happen because we have done our own for the past several years. And we'll continue to do our own extended school year. Questions? Okay, we have 1 guest teacher to approve next week, Amy Trimble. Also, any further discussion that you want to have on superintendent evaluation this evening in executive session, we'll have the yearly motion to approve the evaluation for 2021. Also, Act 93. I know Admin Compensation Committee wants to talk in executive session in regards to the Act 93 agreement. And those are the items for the open session. Questions, comments that needs to be discussed for the open session? Okay, if not, we'll move to executive session. Once Mr. Gramling gives us the okay.